Hello everyone and welcome back to the Midwestern Reloader channel. Walker here with another load segment. And in front of you, you will notice a gun you probably haven't seen on the channel yet. This is my 308. It is a Remington model 783, just the standard 783. It's not the Ranch or the, I think they make a heavy barrel version now. But this is just your plain Jane 783 in 308. This is now the third scope I've had on this gun. The one that came on it when I bought it was a cheap Bushnell, which, nothing against Bushnell, it's just them cheaper ones. They don't seem to last very long. There was nothing wrong with it when I took it off. It's just, got a new scope for my 270, so I took that Vortex that was on my 270, put it on here, and then I found that it just didn't want to hold zero. And after that time I went to the range, I found out that one of the screws on my front ring was loose. So I tightened it, took it back to the range, and still the same problem with my shots just hitting all over the place. But when Scott gave me this loophole to put on here, just for the hell of it, I checked the torque on my bases, because it says the Weaver style bases, and this back screw that's covered up by the ring was a little loose, so I tightened it down. Hopefully that fixed the problem. But let's get on to what we are loading. So if you remember a while back in one of the 223 videos, I was at Walmart and I picked some of these up. These are the 168 grain Matchkings from Sierra. I've always heard good things about these bullets. I've just never tried them until now. So I am very intrigued to see how these are going to perform. So as you can see, I have actually quite a bit of brass here. I got a bigger amount than normal. I have 54 pieces of brass, all prepped and ready to go. Now, before I started filming, I did go ahead and these were already resized and deprimed. I just had them sitting in an enamel can. So all I had to do was trim them, chamfer and deburr, and put a primer in them. So these are already prepped and ready to go. But what I'm going to do is, zoom you guys out here. I'm going to go through all the different powders we are going to be trying with these particular bullets. So 3 of them you've seen on the channel before, 3 of them you haven't. So we have Hodgdon CFE 223 and its counterpart, BLC 2, and my favorite powder for the 308, Varget. Now the next 3 are going to kind of be oddballs, and 2 of them you're going to think, well, those are too slow burning for the 308. The data I got for these came straight out of the 5th edition of the Sierra manual. Now, and on top of it, I emailed Sierra to confirm that I could use that data safely, and I also called them and talked to one of their technicians about it. And I gotta say, guys, 10 out of 10 on Sierra's customer service. Very nice. Willing to give you as much information as they can. And straight to the point, because one of the powders I wanted to try was Accurate 5744, and he told me right out, he goes, we've never tested it. It's a little too fast burning. He goes, I wouldn't recommend using it. Now, Hodgdon does have data for it, so if you want to use it, go ahead and use it. I myself, not going to use it. But anyway, Next one is Ramshot Exterminator. Now, this has a little bit faster of a burn speed than Ramshot Tac, but it's pretty close to H335. And in Sierra's manual, H335 is listed. I forgot to ask him about this when I called him, so I quick emailed him back. He said, yeah, go ahead, use this. You're not going to have any problems. Again, got data for this off Hodgdon's website. Now for the two that are probably going to baffle some people. First one is Winchester 760. Now this is a good powder for, like your 243 or 270. I think you can use it in the 30-06. And I bought this powder for the 243. Had kind of mediocre results with it. But it's like I didn't want it to go to waste. So I wanted to find something else that this would work in. And when I seen it listed in the Sierra manual, I'm like, perfect. Because my thought to it, like I said, it's a slower burning powder. So, am I safe to use it in the 308? When I seen the older data, because there's controversy out there for some people of using older load data. Now, the technician at Sierra said right out, you can use pretty much any data safely that's been printed after about the year 2000. And the 5th edition was printed in 2003, so it's safe to use. So that's number 5. And number 6 on the list. Now this one actually surprised me quite a bit. And that's H380. Again, you look at this 22 250, 220 Swift, 243, 6mm Rem, 257 Roberts, 25-06, and then the 30-06. This one surprised me a little bit that you could use it in the 308 because, again, it's a slower burning powder. But like I said, I contacted Sierra. All these powders are safe to use. You can go in their manual, whether it's on their website or on their app, or I think the newest one's the 6th edition. You're going to see CFE 223. You're going to see Varget. BLC2 doesn't show up, but in the older manuals it does. Now the data I am using for this, the BLC2 is off Hodgdon's website. And then both the H380 and the Winchester 760 is from the 5th edition. And then Hodgdon's website for the Exterminator. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of these out of the way. Now, all of these, except for Varget, the rest of them are all ball powders, or spherical powders, whatever you want to call them. Now, some manuals out there, like I showed in the 223, I think it was the last video loading them 50 grain spears. Some manuals will state that when you use a spherical powder to use a magnum primer, and all that's for is more consistent ignition, or if you're using it in really cold temperatures. Now, a lot of these powders, except for the Varget, can be a little temperature sensitive. So you just gotta keep that in mind. But I'm kind of intrigued to see what all these different powders are going to do. We're going to kind of do this where if these first couple of tests don't show good results with that particular powder, it's going to get pushed to the back. We'll bring the ones that are the best forward and continue loading with those. So we're going to do 3 shots of each powder charge, 3 different powder charges like we have been. Now, I'm going to go back through with all the 223 test loads, and I'm going to load up 2 additional ones for each powder charge, so we have 5. But for these, I'm only going to do 3 just because I want to save as many of these as possible. You know, you spend basically $50 on 100 of them. And I'm using 54. So I have just under half left so that we can continue doing testing, or if we find a load that it likes off the bat, we can load them up. Now I will say my 308 is predominantly a hunting gun. You know, my go-to load of choice right now is a 165 grain Hornady interlock with 43 grains of Varget. That load has been doing wonders for me, but then like I said, I started having issues with the scope up top. I think it's the base at this point, and if tightening it down fixed the problem, then I'm just going to go get some blue Loctite and torque them back down just to be safe. Otherwise, if that didn't fix the problem, I'm probably just going to throw a Picatinny rail on it and call it good. But, so yeah, like I said, we have 54 total pieces of brass. In this one, 45 pieces, are Federal. The other 9 are Hornady. It's just a case of Federal is what I had the most of, and Hornady was just sitting there, so I just grabbed it. You know, it really didn't matter. I have some Winchester, I have some Remington stuff. You know, I am running low on 308 brass, so hopefully this stuff lasts me a while. Like I said, a majority of this is all Federal brass, and then 9 pieces are going to be Hornady brass. So I'm just going to go ahead and show you guys. This is the bullet we are working with. This is the 168 grain Matchking from Sierra. And these things just look beautiful. So, and I know I got a comment on one of my videos about how I need a powder trickler. I do have one. It's just a case of when I do these videos, I'm using so many different powders that I don't want to have to sit there and dump it out every time and then fill it up, get it all set up. You know, it would just be too much of a headache. So that's why I'm just going to continue using the Lee dipper like I normally do, and just keep doing it that way. So guys, I am going to get everything situated here, get the scale out. I'll get the gun off the bench, make some more room. And then I'll show you the load data that I wrote down, and we'll look at starting to throw some charges. Alrighty guys, so here is the data I have for the 168 grain Sierra Matchking. So we're using Varget, and I just wrote down that I got it on Sierra's website. I do have the app on my phone, but when I'm looking for a quick way to find minimum and maximum, I just go to their website. It's a little easier to figure out because on their app they have a little slider. But so minimum charge is 40.9, max is 45. So we're going to start at 41, and like always we're going to move up in half grain increments. So it'll be 41, 41.5, 42. And we'll come over here. Here's the data for H380. Again, this is out of the 5th edition of their handbook. You have a minimum charge of 42.5 and a max of 48.2. So we're going to start at 42.5, work our way up to 43.5. And then for BLC2, Like I said, I got that on the Hodgin Reloading Data Center. They have a starting charge of 44, max charge of 47. So we're going to start at 44, go to 45. For the Winchester 760, again, got it out of the 5th edition. So they're calling for a start of 44.2 and a max of 49.2. So we're going to start at 44.5, go up to 45.5. And then CFE 223, again, got this on the website. You know, you could, like I said, use the app, but there's a little slider. It's just a lot easier to get your minimum and maximum on their website. So they got a minimum charge of 40.8 and a max charge of 47. We're going to start at 41, work our way up to 42. And last but not least, we got Ramshot Exterminator. Again, got it off the Hodgin Reloading Data Center. They have a minimum charge of 37.4 and a max of 41.6. So we're going to start at 37.5, work our way up to 38.5. Like I said, we're going to do three shots for each load, 3 different charges. So, but yeah, like I said, we're going to move up in half grain increments. You know, this is pretty easy to find data. Like I said, I used literally their website, that's going off the 6th edition, which is the most current edition of their handbook. The 5th edition, which again, like I said, it was printed in 2003, but I was already told it's safe to use, so I'm not worried. And then I'm using Hodgin's Reloading Data Center. I've used data from them in the past, have had absolutely no issues. But some of that you got to be a little conservative with. Like I said, in one of the videos I stated, I don't remember which video it was. I think it might have been the video with the 50 grain spear bullets, that there was only like a grain and a half difference between what Hodgin had listed for their minimum and maximum charge. And I backed that way off because I just didn't feel like messing with it. So, what I'm going to do to make this a little easier on myself, like I said, all these pieces are prepped and ready to go. But these 5 and then the 4 here are all Hornady brass. So, I'm going to take this load block, and as I load these, so just put them in here. Just space these out a little. And then what I'm going to do is, when it comes to seating the bullets, I'll then switch to the RCBS Universal one, and I'll just lay them out in here in a way that I know where they are, kind of thing. But here is our first 9. So I think the way we're going to do this is we're just going to start at the top at Varget, and we'll go down. So Varget, BLC2, CFE, and then we'll jump to these 3. You know, these are going to be your 3 common powders you're probably going to be using with these bullets, other than, say, like TAC or some of the accurate powders. You know, out of the powders I have, these are the most common. These 3 are, you know, the oddballs, but they'll work. You know, there is published data for them. This isn't, you know, going to be an experiment of, oh, will this powder work? And then you risk harming your gun, harming yourself, harming others. So like I said, this is all published data. Just make sure you start low, work your way up. So we're going to start with Varget. So start charge of 41 and a end charge or a finish charge of 42, moving up in half grain increments. So here we have our trusty RCVS funnel with the 30 caliber attachment and our trusty RCVS electronic scale. So it's on, even though it says 0, I always zero it out. And we're going to start with Varget. Now, like I stated in some of the 223 videos, I have stopped using this powder in the 223 videos just because I was, saving it for doing more 308 loads, and I'm like, I don't know when I'm going to load 308 next, or if I'm going to be able to make a video out of it. And then I bought these bullets, and I'm like, well, perfect, time to make a video. Even though I'm sure there's probably hundreds of videos out there of people loading this exact bullet. I mean, it is a pretty common one. But I gotta ask, guys, though, if you load match type ammunition, comment below what your go-to bullet is. I know some people like Hornady bullets over Sierra, vice versa. Some people like Barnes bullets. Nosler or Swift, or there's so many out there. But if I were to pick a match bullet, I think I'd go with what I picked would be a 168 grain Matchking. I mean, can't get any better than that. Now, I would actually like to compare the regular Matchking like these to the tipped version. I know the tipped version does have a higher BC. Because of the tip, makes it more aerodynamic. So I'd just be interested to see if there is a difference in accuracy. There we go, 41. Alright guys, just to make this go a little quicker, I'll just show me pouring the charge in the first 3. Then I'll do the rest of them off camera. That way we don't have, because we're using 6 different powders, I don't want to make this extremely long. It would get awfully boring watching me pour all the powder. So I'll go ahead and get the rest of these poured and bring you guys back when we're on the next powder. Alrighty guys, so I went ahead and just seeded the bullets right away. Don't really need to show that just because done it how many times before. I think the manual states 2.81. I just went to 2.8. And I did finally get some different colored Sharpie markers, and I colored the bottoms, or colored the primers of them, and then wrote them down. So I'll do that for each one. I got 12 different colored markers, so after a while I have to, instead of coloring the primers, I'll have to do like a pattern on them or something, but no big deal. So next up, we have BLC2. With a start charge of 44 grains and a finish charge of 45. Again, moving up in half grain increments. This is actually one of the powders I'm hoping performs pretty well, just because I have quite a bit of it. What are we looking for? 44. Ooh. It can always be tricky working with ball powders sometimes. Here we go, 44. Like I said, I'll charge the first 3, and I'll pour the rest of them off camera. I don't think you guys want to sit here for half the video watching me pour powder charges. If I had a powder dispenser, it might be a little different. But again, I'm using several different powders, so even that would be a headache. Come on, you're right there. As of recording this video too, guys, we are at 146 subscribers, so only 4 more to go before we announce the requirements for the giveaway. So tell your friends about our channel. Like I said, we do primarily reloading stuff, but we cover all kinds of firearm related topics. So alrighty. So there's the first 3 done. I'll do the next 6, seat the bullets, and we'll get on to the next powder. Alrighty guys, so next up on the list is CFE 223, and we'll be starting at 41 grains, working our way up to 42. Now I haven't tried either BLC2 or CFE in the 308 yet, so I'm actually very interested to see the results. The only powders I've really used in the 308 are Varget and the Ramshot Exterminator, because I use Varget for myself, and a buddy of mine has me load some of the 110 VMAXs for his 308 with the Ramshot Exterminator. almost there. Come on. There we go, 41. All right, one last charge. And then I'll switch to the next powder for you guys. Come on. You're right there. There we go. Alrighty guys, I'll get these measured out. And bring in the next powder. Alrighty guys, now we're on to, like I said, the more bizarre powders. You know, something you wouldn't expect to see 308 loaded with. So this is H380. And we have a start charge of 42.5 and a finish charge of 43.5. This is a very, very fine spherical powder. Okay, 42.5. And into the first one. Now, I've never used this powder before. Scott gave me this. There's not much left in this 1 pounder. But I was looking at some 243 loads that I was thinking about using it in. But like I said, when I found that I could use it in here for the 308, I told myself, I'm like, why not give, you know, everybody the most information possible. I mean, you guys might have a pound of H380 sitting on your shelf that you don't have anything you can really use it in. Well, here's another option. Like I said, you can use it in the 308 apparently, which, like I said, I was very, very surprised to see. Just because it is a slower burning powder. But hey, if it works, it works. These are almost like such perfectly round spheres that it pours so easily. Here we go. There's our last charge of 42.5. I will go ahead and get the ones loaded, get the bullets seated, and we'll be on to the next powder. Alright guys, we're on to our 5th powder. And for that we have Winchester 760 with a start charge of 44.5 and a finish charge of 45.5. Like I said, everything but the Varget is a spherical powder. I am not using Magnum primers. I am just using standard large rifle primers. If we seem to be having an issue with some of these ball powders, maybe I'll have to pick some up just so we can see if there is a change. Alright, 44.5. I said in this Winchester 760, I originally bought it for the 100 grain 243 bullets that I was loading, and I just got very mediocre results. Like if it was just for a hunting situation, you know, it'd be fine. I'd like them to be, the groups to be a little tighter than what they are. Here's our last of our first charge. So far, the only part that was kind of a pain to measure out this way was the H380. Like I said, it's almost like such a perfectly sphere granule of powder that it just rolls right out of the dipper before you can really control what it's doing. Alrighty, like all the rest of them, I'll finish doing these off camera and we'll get to the last powder. Alright everyone, and our last powder is Ramshot Exterminator. And we will have a start charge of 37.5 and a finish charge of 38.5. Might help if I turn the scale back on. Look at that, scooped out just the right amount. $37.5. Gotta get that 2 more times. And there we go. There's the last one. So, I will go ahead and weigh the rest of them, get them seated. And I'll show you all of them together. So there we have it, folks. One bullet, 6 different powders. I am very, very interested to see what some of these do. Like I said, I have high expectations for the Varget and like the BLC2 and the CFE. It's the last 3 we did, the Winchester 760, the H380, and the Ramshot Exterminator, that I'm not exactly sure how they're going to do. Those are kind of the ones I expect to do the worst out of all of them, but you never know. So I have all these in here. Like I said, I went ahead and colorized everything. And then another page I kind of laid out the box and where they're all sitting just so I don't forget. But yeah, there is all 54 of our test loads. So these I can tell you right now, just because of the sheer amount of them we have, I might do 2 separate range videos, do like the first 3 powders and then the second 3 powders in a different video. I don't know. It really depends on weather. If I can get a day that's not too hot to where the barrel will cool down fast enough, then maybe we'll just do all of them all in one go. But that'll be determined in the future. Like I said, right now I don't know. Excuse me. Like I said, you know, when I saw that you could use some of these powders that are more traditionally used in, you know, like your 270s, your 243s, even the 30-06 to an extent, I was surprised that there was data for them for the 308. You know, your 308 and your 223s to an extent use more of the powders that are in like that middle of the chart. So like your Varget, your BLC2, you know, your Winchester 760 and your H380 are slower burning powders. I'll probably I'll post or I'll put a picture of the burn rate chart somewhere within the video just to kind of show where all the powders land. So, but I think that's just about going to do it, guys. Like I said, as of recording this video, we need 4 more subscribers till we hit 150. We'll get out the details to how to enter the giveaway. And someone's going to be winning the CV Life bipod that I reviewed. And maybe a couple other items. But we'll figure that out when we get there. But for now, guys, this has been Walker with the Midwestern Reloaders. And I hope to see you guys on the flip side.